Oops. Okay. Hi, Judy here from Bungalow Quilting and Yarn. I want to tell you about my new book. It's Quilts for Scrap Lovers, 16 Projects Start with Simple Squares. There are some really important concepts about this book that I want to share with you quickly today. One, it uses the actual scraps from your bins and your tubs. You're not using new pieces of fabric. You're not using pre-cuts or charm squares. You're using the actual problem scraps that you don't know what to do with. I've got a whole chapter at the beginning of the book that talks about how to use difficult prints, how to use fabrics that are difficult sizes that can't be strip cut. And we've all got lots and lots of these in our tubs, so pay attention because we're going to learn how to use them today. This comes with some companion tools. Now there are a couple things about scrap quilting that kind of drive me crazy, and one of them is when a scrap quilt is so contrived you can see that it wasn't actually made from scraps. It was made from new pieces of fabric. That's the one thing that drives me crazy. Second thing that drives me crazy is a complicated ruler that you take home from a show or a shop and you can't remember how to use it. These are just 3 squares, a 3.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5 inch square. You'll never forget how to use a square. Every single quilt in this book uses only a 3.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5 inch square. Watch, I'm going to show you how to cut one of the scrap quilts in this book, and I'm going to show you just how fast and easy it is to use these squares. Now I've got fabric here that is a leftover fat quarter from some other project. I've got a contrasting piece of darker orange and a contrasting piece of lighter. So I'm going to put 2 layers here. I have 2 layers of the dark and 2 layers of the light. And I'm going to lay them like this on top of each other. And I'm going to take that 5.5 inch square and I'm going to get a nice sharp rotary cutter blade in my cutter and I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut around the 5.5 inch square on top of my 2 lights and 2 darks. Now remember what I said, every single quilt in this book uses only a 3.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5 inch square and nothing more. You won't believe how easy it is to use these squares. Now you're going to take this off. You're going to put the 3.5 inch square back into the corner. And this is just one of many of the blocks that are in that book. And a lot of them are using this exact same concept. You cut across the top, stop, and I'm going to put my 5.5 inch square back. And I'm going to remove it. Now believe it or not, those are the only cuts that you're going to need to make for one of those blocks for one of the quilts in the book. It's that fast. So we're going to separate these out so that we have a 4 patch. Now we're going to sew our smaller rectangles onto our squares. Sew this here. Sew this here. We can chain piece because we don't want to waste thread either. Sew this here and this to this. Now because we've made a 1/4 inch seam, we've shortened that up by just a little bit so that when we put this piece on, the only piece we're trimming off or wasting at all is that tiny little piece right there. So you're using up your scraps that are in the bins left over from making garments, making bags, drunkard's path quilts, things like that. And you're using squares that are not complicated, and you're also not wasting any fabric either. And just like that, that simple, you've got that block. Now, every single one of the quilts in the book here is just that simple. I have a whole chapter on how to use up odd shapes, how to use up odd prints, how to put different colors together that you never, ever thought you were going to put together before. So I hope you check it out. It's available from C&T Publishing. Quilts for Scrap Lovers, 16 Projects Start with Simple Squares. Thanks.